Xar'thok the Bone Crusher had seen many species beg for their pathetic lives. The Vorthani, with their crystalline tears. The Melkari who literally dissolved into puddles of fear. Even the proud Zentari warriors who would rather eat their own tentacles than show weakness. But humans? Oh, humans were special. They had this annoying habit of doing the exact opposite of what any rational being would do when faced with certain death, which is why Xar'thok found himself staring at a small human child, who couldn't be more than 12 rotations old, sitting cross-legged on the detention platform like she was waiting for afternoon snacks instead of, well, him. You know, kid, Xar'thok rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. Most beings your size would have wet themselves by now. His massive form cast shadows that could eclipse small moons, and his reputation preceded him across 17 star systems. The Bone Crusher, the Death Wielder. The thing parents told their children about when they refused to eat their vegetables. The human child, who had introduced herself as Luna Martinez when they dragged her aboard, looked up at him with eyes that held absolutely zero fear. Zero. Not even a tiny bit. It was unsettling. That's gross, she said, wrinkling her nose. Also, I already went to the bathroom before they brought me here. Mom always says to use the facilities when you have the chance. Xar'thok's 3 hearts stopped beating for a moment. In his 8 centuries of existence, spanning countless battles and interrogations, no one had ever responded to his intimidation tactics by discussing bathroom etiquette. The sheer audacity was refreshing? No. Infuriating. Definitely infuriating. Do you know who I am, little meat sack? He growled, leaning forward until his fangs were mere inches from her face. His breath, which smelled like sulfur and regret, would normally cause hardened soldiers to faint. Luna tilted her head like a curious puppy. You're the guy with really bad breath who needs a better dental hygienist. A collective gasp echoed through the detention bay. Even Xar'thok's own crew, the feared Bloodwing pirates, exchanged nervous glances. Their captain's eye twitched. Actually twitched. The Death Wielder's eye. Twitching. I am Xar'thok the Bone Crusher, he roared, his voice shaking the bulkheads. I have ended civilizations. I have drunk the blood of emperors. I have made entire species extinct with my bare claws. Wow, Luna said, completely unimpressed. That sounds like a lot of paperwork. The pirate captain's second in command, a particularly ugly Xar'thok named Vex, whispered urgently into his communicator. Sir, perhaps we should just space her, the bounty said, dead or alive. Xar'thok held up one massive claw for silence. This was personal now. No snot-nosed human larva was going to make him look like a fool in front of his crew. He'd broken warriors who had fought entire armadas. He'd reduced galactic heroes to whimpering wrecks. One small human child wouldn't be his downfall. You see, little one, he said, switching to what he thought was a more psychological approach. Your parents sold you to me. They traded you for their own miserable lives. How does that make you feel? Luna considered this for a moment, then shrugged. Makes sense. Dad never was good with money, and Mom always said I was more trouble than I was worth. She paused. Although, to be fair, that was usually when I accidentally set something on fire. You set things on fire? Xar'thok found himself genuinely curious despite his growing frustration. Oh yeah. Last week I burned down Mr. Peterson's shed. But it was an accident. Luna's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. I was just trying to see if hairspray really was flammable like Tommy said, and turns out it super is. Who knew? The Death Wielder, terror of the Outer Rim, scourge of 3 sectors, found himself at a complete loss for words. This child was discussing arson like she was talking about her favorite ice cream flavor. That's destruction of property, he managed weakly. Yep, Dad had to pay for a new shed. That's probably why they sold me, actually. Makes perfect business sense when you think about it. Xar'thok turned to his crew, all of whom were staring at Luna like she was some exotic and dangerous creature they'd never encountered before, which, given their line of work, was saying something. Vex, he called to his second in command. Remind me what the humans are supposed to be afraid of. The Xar'thok consulted his datapad with shaking tentacles. According to Galactic records, sir, humans fear death, pain, separation from family units, and, spiders. Spiders? Xar'thok raised an eyebrow ridge. Small arachnid creatures native to their homeworld, sir. Apparently they cause widespread panic despite being largely harmless. The massive pirate captain looked down at Luna, who was now examining her fingernails with the kind of bored expression usually reserved for particularly dull mathematics lessons. Are you afraid of spiders, child? Luna looked up, confused. Why would I be afraid of spiders? They eat mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are way worse than spiders. Have you ever had a mosquito bite? They're super annoying. At this point, even Vex was starting to look concerned for his captain's mental health. The great Xar'thok had never failed to break a prisoner before. His reputation was built on making the strongest beings in the galaxy cry for their mothers. Look, kid, Xar'thok tried again, his voice taking on a desperate edge that his crew pretended not to notice. I'm going to torture you. Do you understand what that means? It means you're going to hurt me until I tell you something you want to know, Luna replied matter-of-factly. But I'm only 12, so I don't really know anything important. I mean, I know where Dad keeps his emergency chocolate stash, but that's probably not what you're after. Emergency chocolate stash? The question slipped out before Xar'thok could stop it. Oh yeah, behind the old paint cans in the garage. He thinks Mom doesn't know, but she totally does. She just pretends not to because it makes him happy to think he's being sneaky. There was something deeply unsettling about having a normal conversation with someone you were planning to torture. It was throwing off Xar'thok's entire rhythm. Usually by now his prisoners were either unconscious from fear or trying to bargain with him using whatever pathetic resources they had. Right. Well, the torture, he said, trying to get back on track. It's going to be very painful. I figured. Luna nodded sagely. Question though, are you going to use the psychological torture or the physical torture first? Because I read this book about prisoners of war, and apparently there's a whole strategy to it. The Death Wielder stared at her. If you read books about torture, I read books about everything. Mom says I have an unhealthy curiosity about morbid subjects. She's probably right. I also read about serial killers, disasters, and this really interesting article about what happens to your body when you get struck by lightning. What happens when you get struck by lightning? Vex asked, then immediately looked embarrassed for engaging. Well, first your nervous system gets completely fried, then your blood literally boils, and if you're really unlucky, your clothes catch fire. But sometimes people survive and get these cool scars that look like tree branches. They're called Lichtenberg figures. The entire detention bay had gone silent except for the hum of life support systems. A 12-year-old human was casually discussing the effects of electrical trauma while a crew of hardened space pirates listened in fascination. Xar'thok realized he was losing control of the situation. This was supposed to be simple. Capture the human child, use her as leverage against the Earth Defense Coalition, profit. Instead, he was getting a biology lesson from someone who should be crying for her mommy. You know what? He said, his voice rising to its former threatening level. I'm done playing games. Vex, bring me the neural disruptor. Let's see how chatty she is when her brain is being slowly liquefied. Finally, he saw a flicker of something cross Luna's face. Fear, concern. No, it was curiosity again. Neural disruptor? How does that work exactly? Does it target specific neural pathways, or is it more of a general disruption field? Vex looked at his captain helplessly. Sir, she's asking technical questions about the torture device. I can hear her, Vex. Luna perked up even more. Oh, is that the same technology they use in neural inhibitors for people with epilepsy? Because that's actually really cool how they can target specific brain frequencies to prevent seizures. Although I guess you're using it for the opposite purpose, which is kind of mean but also scientifically interesting. The great Xar'thok, who had once made an entire stellar council wet themselves with a single glare, found himself in the unprecedented position of having to explain his torture methods to his victim. It's not for medical purposes, he said weakly. Well, obviously. But the principle is probably similar, right? You're disrupting neural activity, just in a harmful way instead of a helpful way. It's like how radiation can be used to treat cancer or to kill people, depending on the dosage and application method. How do you know about radiation therapy? Xar'thok asked, then immediately regretted encouraging her. Discovery Channel mostly. Also, Wikipedia. Dad says I spend too much time on the internet, but where else are you going to learn about obscure medical procedures and the theoretical applications of quantum physics in everyday life? Quantum physics? Vex squeaked. Oh yeah. Did you know that quantum entanglement suggests that particles can be connected across vast distances instantaneously? It's probably how your faster-than-light communication systems work, assuming you've figured out how to maintain quantum coherence over interstellar distances without decoherence from background radiation. The detention bay had become so quiet you could hear a pin drop in the vacuum of space. Luna Martinez, 12-year-old human child, had just casually explained the theoretical basis for galactic communications technology while sitting on a torture platform. Xar'thok's left eye resumed its twitching. His reputation, built over centuries of fear and violence, was being systematically dismantled by someone who probably still had to ask permission to stay up past bedtime. Right, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The neural disruptor. Are you okay? Luna asked, genuine concern creeping into her voice. You look kinda pale. Well, paler than before. Is that your natural color, or are you sick? And that, Xar'thok realized with growing horror, was when everything started to go wrong. Because Luna Martinez wasn't just unafraid of him. She was worried about him. No one worried about the Death Wielder. No one asked if he was feeling okay. No one treated him like a person instead of a monster. It was unsettling in ways that no amount of combat experience had prepared him for. I'm fine, he managed. Are you sure? Because you're making this weird wheezing sound, and your hands are shaking a little bit. Do you have anxiety issues? My cousin Jake has panic attacks sometimes, and he makes similar noises. I do not have anxiety issues. There's no shame in mental health problems, Luna continued earnestly. Therapy can be really helpful. Obviously that might be hard to find in your line of work, but maybe you could try meditation or breathing exercises. The most feared pirate in known space was being given mental health advice by a 6th grader. This was not how his day was supposed to go. Vex, he said through gritted fangs. Perhaps we should reconsider the spacing option. Sir, the bounty specifically requested her alive for interrogation purposes. Who requested the bounty? Luna asked with interest. Is it someone I know? Because honestly, my list of enemies is pretty short. There's Mrs. Henderson from down the street, but that's mostly because I accidentally killed her petunias with my chemistry set. And Tommy Morrison, but he's just mad because I proved his science fair project violated several laws of physics. You have a chemistry set? Xar'thok found himself asking. Had. Past tense. It got taken away after the incident with the smoke grenades. Smoke grenades? I was trying to make colored smoke for a school play, but I may have miscalculated the reaction ratios. The fire department was not impressed. Vex leaned over to his captain. Sir, should we be concerned that she has experience with explosive devices? I heard that, Luna said cheerfully. And they weren't explosive. They were just enthusiastically reactive. There's a difference. Explosives are designed to cause damage. My smoke grenades were just poorly calibrated. Although the damage was admittedly similar, the Death Wielder was beginning to understand why Luna's parents had sold her to space pirates. The child was a walking disaster with an encyclopedic knowledge of destructive science and absolutely no sense of self-preservation, which raised an interesting question. Luna, he said slowly, are you not afraid because you're brave or because you don't understand the danger you're in? She considered this seriously. Probably both. I mean, I know you could kill me. You're like 8 feet tall and have claws that could probably cut through steel. But being afraid wouldn't change anything, right? You're either going to hurt me or you're not. Worrying about it just seems like a waste of energy. Most people would find that difficult to accept. Most people haven't read as much about survival psychology as I have. Did you know that panic is actually one of the leading causes of death in emergency situations? People make bad decisions when they're scared. They run when they should hide when they should run, or just freeze up completely. So, you're staying calm as a survival strategy? Partly. Also, you seem like you might be more reasonable than your reputation suggests. I mean, you haven't actually hurt me yet, even though you keep threatening to. Either you're really bad at your job, or you're not as evil as you pretend to be. The observation hit Xar'thok like a plasma torpedo to the solar plexus. In all his years of piracy, interrogation, and general mayhem, no one had ever suggested that his threats were empty. Because they weren't. Usually. But looking down at Luna Martinez, with her earnest expression and complete lack of fear, he found himself reluctant to follow through. Which was problematic. "I am absolutely as evil as I pretend to be," he said. But the words lacked their usual conviction. "If you say so." But evil people don't usually have extended conversations with their victims about quantum physics and mental health resources. They don't? Nope. Evil people are typically more focused on the whole causing suffering thing. They don't really have time for educational discussions. Xar'thok looked around at his crew, all of whom were staring at him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright concern. His reputation as the most feared pirate in the galaxy was being systematically destroyed by a 12-year-old with an attitude problem and an unhealthy interest in dangerous science. This was going to require a different approach. "Fine," he said, drawing himself up to his full intimidating height. "If you're so smart, little human, then you should understand that your people have something I want. Information about Earth's defense systems, and you're going to help me get it." Luna tilted her head. "How? I'm 12. I don't have clearance for military secrets. Your father works for the Earth Defense Coalition. Dad fixes the coffee machines." Xar'thok paused. What? He repairs and maintains the automated beverage dispensers for the EDC facilities. It's actually a pretty important job because apparently military personnel get really cranky when their caffeine supply is interrupted, but it's not exactly classified work. The Death Wielder felt a migraine coming on. The bounty said he was a valuable intelligence asset. "Well, I guess if you really want to know the preferred coffee blend ratios for various Earth military installations, Dad's your guy. He's got spreadsheets." Somewhere in the back of Xar'thok's mind, a small voice was suggesting that perhaps he should have done more research before accepting this particular job, but that voice was being drowned out by the much louder voice that was screaming about how a child was making him look like an idiot in front of his crew. "There has to be something," he insisted. "Some piece of information, some access code, some—" "Oh," Luna brightened. "I do know Dad's login password for the maintenance database, but it's just for scheduling repairs and ordering supplies." "What is it?" "Luna 2013. It's the year I was born. Dad's not very creative with passwords." Xar'thok stared at her. "You just told me. Just like that." "Sure. I mean, it's not like it's going to help you invade Earth or anything. The most damage you could do is probably ordering way too much decaf coffee, which would be annoying but not exactly devastating." And that's when Xar'thok realized he was dealing with something far more dangerous than he had initially thought. Luna Martinez wasn't just unafraid of him. She was actively undermining everything he thought he knew about intimidation, fear, and human psychology. She was treating this entire situation like an interesting academic exercise instead of a life or death scenario, which meant that either she was the bravest human child in existence, or she had absolutely no idea what she was dealing with. Both options were equally terrifying for entirely different reasons. The Death Wielder was about to find out which one was correct. 3 hours later, Xar'thok found himself in his private quarters, staring at a bottle of Altarian whiskey, and questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment. Luna Martinez had been moved to a more comfortable holding cell after she'd somehow convinced Vex to give her access to the ship's database for educational purposes. The educational purposes had turned into Luna, providing a running commentary on the ship's structural weaknesses, outdated security protocols, and what she called, frankly embarrassing energy inefficiencies. "Captain," Vex's voice crackled over the intercom, "we have a situation." Xar'thok didn't even lift his head from his hands. "Let me guess. The child has somehow taken control of life support?" "Worse, sir. She's fixed it." The bottle of whiskey paused halfway to Xar'thok's mouth. "She's what?" "The atmospheric recycling system that's been giving us trouble for months. She spotted the problem in the diagnostic readouts and told engineering how to fix it. Turns out we just needed to recalibrate the ion filters and replace a faulty coupling that none of our technicians had noticed." Xar'thok set down the bottle very carefully. "Our prisoner is performing maintenance on our ship." "Yes, sir. Also, she's teaching the galley crew how to make something called grilled cheese sandwiches, and asking very detailed questions about our weapons systems. Questions like what? Quote, why are you still using particle beam arrays when plasma cannons have a much better energy-to-damage ratio? And has anyone considered that your shield generators would be more efficient if you reverse the polarity on the secondary grid? End quote. The Death Wielder closed his eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. When that didn't help, he counted to 20 in 4 more languages. When that still didn't help, he invented new curse words in languages that didn't exist yet. Sir? Vex ventured after the creative swearing subsided. Bring her to the bridge, Xar'thok said wearily. If she's going to destroy my reputation, she might as well do it where everyone can see. 5 minutes later, Luna Martinez skipped onto the bridge of the most feared pirate vessel in known space, looked around at the various control stations and displays, and immediately zeroed in on the tactical systems. Oh wow, she said, her eyes lighting up. Is that a Mark 7 targeting computer? Those are so cool. But why haven't you upgraded to the Mark 9? The target acquisition speed is like 40% faster. The bridge crew, a collection of hardened criminals and battle-scarred veterans, all turned to stare at their captain. Xar'thok's reputation for inspiring terror was rapidly being replaced by a reputation for getting schooled by children. The Mark 9 systems are restricted technology, Xar'thok said through gritted teeth. Only if you buy them legally, Luna pointed out. But you're pirates, right? Can't you just steal one? That's not. It's complicated. Is it though? I mean, you guys have a pretty impressive ship here. Your stealth capabilities alone should make infiltrating a tech facility pretty straightforward, assuming you can bypass the quantum encryption on their security systems, but that's mostly just a matter of having the right algorithms. Chief Navigator Krex, a grizzled Vorthan who had been plotting courses through hostile space for 30 years, leaned forward in his chair. You know about quantum encryption? Sure. It's based on the principle that observing quantum particles changes their state, so any attempt to intercept encrypted data automatically alerts the sender. But there are ways around it if you're clever about manipulating the observation process. Krex looked at Xar'thok with something approaching awe. Captain, she just explained quantum cryptography better than our intelligence briefings do. I'm 12, not stupid, Luna said matter-of-factly, although I guess most adults forget there's a difference. Xar'thok was beginning to suspect that Luna Martinez wasn't just some random human child. No normal 12-year-old had this kind of technical knowledge, which raised the question of who she really was and why someone had put a bounty on her head. Luna, he said slowly, what exactly do your parents do for a living? I told you. Dad fixes coffee machines, and Mom works in accounting. And where did you learn about quantum physics and weapons systems? Luna shrugged. Books, mostly. And the internet. And sometimes I sneak into Dad's office when he brings work home. The EDC training materials are actually pretty interesting once you get past all the boring safety protocols. Training materials? Xar'thok's voice went dangerously quiet. Yeah, you know, technical manuals, system specifications, strategic assessments. Dad says they help him understand how his equipment fits into the bigger picture. But honestly, I think he just likes feeling important. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Even the most seasoned pirates were starting to realize that they might have stumbled into something much bigger than a simple kidnapping job. Luna, Xar'thok said very carefully, how much classified Earth Defense Coalition material have you read? Define classified. Because technically Dad isn't supposed to bring work home at all. But he's been doing it for years, and nobody's ever said anything about it. Everything. Tell me everything you've seen. Luna considered this, tapping her finger against her chin in thought. Well, there are the maintenance schedules for all the major defense installations, the technical specifications for the defense grid satellites, personnel rosters for key facilities, communication protocols for emergency situations, and this really fascinating analysis of potential invasion scenarios and countermeasures. The color drained from Xar'thok's face, which was impressive considering his natural complexion was already somewhere between corpse gray and old pewter. You've memorized classified defense information. I have a really good memory. Dad says it's a blessing and a curse, mostly because I remember every embarrassing thing he's ever done and bring it up at family dinners. Weapons Officer Grix, who had been quietly running calculations on his console, looked up with an expression of pure terror. Captain, if she's telling the truth, this child has access to intelligence that could compromise Earth's entire defense network. Which explains the bounty, Xar'thok murmured. Someone wants her for what she knows, not who she is. Luna perked up with interest. Oh, are you guys working for the hegemony? Because that would make sense. They've been trying to crack Earth's defenses for years, but they keep using brute force approaches instead of looking for systemic vulnerabilities. How do you know about the hegemony? Xar'thok demanded. Same place I learned about quantum encryption. Dad's files include threat assessments for all known hostile alien factions. The hegemony chapter was particularly interesting because it detailed their previous failed invasion attempts and analyzed their tactical weaknesses. Chief Engineer Morv, who had been silently listening from his station, suddenly started laughing. Not a pleasant laugh. The kind of laugh that suggested someone was having a complete mental breakdown. What's so funny, Morv? Xar'thok snapped. Don't you see, Captain? Morv wheezed between fits of hysteria. We've kidnapped the most valuable intelligence asset in the galaxy, and she's sitting here giving us lessons in military strategy while asking if we want some of her sandwich. Luna looked down at the grilled cheese she'd been munching on throughout the conversation. You guys want some? I made extra. The food synthesizer in the galley is actually pretty advanced once you figure out how to work around its limitations. She improved our food synthesizer too? Xar'thok asked weakly. Just a few tweaks to the molecular assembly patterns. The protein structures were kind of bland before, but if you adjust the amino acid configurations just slightly, you can create much more interesting flavors and textures. Navigator Krex was now staring at Luna like she was some kind of mythical creature. You reconfigured molecular assembly patterns for better food. It wasn't hard. The principles are basically the same as industrial replication technology, just scaled down and optimized for organic compounds, although I did have to be careful not to accidentally create any toxic proteins. That would have been awkward. Xar'thok felt his sanity slipping away like atmosphere through a hull breach. You could have poisoned my entire crew. But I didn't. See, I'm not completely reckless. Luna grinned proudly. I triple-checked all the molecular bonds before implementing the changes. Oh, well, as long as you triple-checked, Xar'thok said sarcastically. Exactly. That's what peer review is for. Although I guess I couldn't really get peer review since none of your crew has a background in biochemistry. I had to settle for running computer simulations. At this point, half the bridge crew was having some kind of existential crisis, and the other half was looking at Luna like she was either the most dangerous being in the galaxy or their new favorite person. Possibly both. Captain, Vex said quietly, what do we do with her? It was a good question. Originally, the plan had been simple. Grab the kid, deliver her to the client, collect payment. But Luna Martinez had turned out to be so much more than they'd bargained for. She wasn't just a hostage. She was a walking repository of classified military intelligence, a scientific prodigy, and apparently a ship systems improvement consultant. I have a question, Luna said, raising her hand like she was in class. Who exactly hired you to kidnap me? That's classified, Xar'thok said, automatically. Is it though? I mean, I'm your prisoner. Presumably they want to question me about something. Don't I have a right to know what I'm being accused of? You're not being accused of anything. You're being kidnapped. But why? If someone just wanted to hurt my parents, there are easier ways to do it. And if they wanted Earth's defense information, they could have just tried hacking Dad's computer instead of going through all the trouble of space piracy. Xar'thok realized she had a point, unless they tried hacking and failed. Oh, they definitely tried hacking, Luna said cheerfully. I caught 3 separate intrusion attempts last month and reported them to EDC security. Dad's password might not be very creative, but his cybersecurity protocols are actually pretty solid. You caught them? Well, I noticed the unusual network activity and traced it back to its source. Turned out to be coming from a hegemony surveillance station in the Proxima system. I may have also crashed their entire intelligence network with a feedback loop virus, but that was mostly just to see if I could do it. The bridge fell silent again. Luna had just casually admitted to committing an act of cyber warfare against one of the most dangerous alien factions in known space. You crashed a hegemony intelligence network? Xar'thok asked in a strangled voice. It was more like a temporary system failure. although it did take them about 3 weeks to get everything back online. So maybe it was more permanent than I intended. This 12-year-old girl, Grix said slowly, single-handedly crippled hegemony intelligence operations for 3 weeks. Accidentally, Luna clarified. I was just trying to trace the hack back to its source. The virus thing was kind of a bonus. Xar'thok looked around at his crew, all of whom were staring at Luna with expressions ranging from terror to admiration. His fearsome reputation was completely shot, but he was starting to think that might not be the worst thing that could happen to him. Captain, Communications Officer Zara interrupted. We're receiving a priority transmission from the client. Put it through, Xar'thok said, dreading what was coming next. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the scaled face of Overlord Vash'ti, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony's military forces and generally regarded as one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Xar'thok, Vash'ti hissed. I trust you have secured the human child? Yes, Overlord. She's here on my ship. Excellent. I look forward to extracting every piece of information from her pathetic little mind before disposing of her properly. Luna, who had been listening to this exchange with interest, suddenly perked up. Oh hey, you're the guy whose network I crashed. How did you like my virus? I based the core algorithm on a fractal expansion principle that I thought was really elegant. Vash'ti's expression went from smug satisfaction to complete shock in about half a second. You? What? The virus. You know, the one that took down your entire intelligence network? I wasn't sure if the feedback loop would be stable enough to cause sustained damage, but it looks like it worked pretty well. The Hegemony Overlord's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. You are the one responsible for that attack. Guilty as charged, Luna said cheerfully. Although technically it was self-defense since you guys tried to hack my dad's computer first. Vash'ti turned his attention back to Xar'thok. Bring her to me immediately. I will personally see that she suffers for what she has done. Actually, Luna interrupted, I don't think that's going to work out for you. And why not, you insignificant little worm? Luna's expression suddenly became very serious. Because while you've been making threatening speeches, I've been analyzing your ship's transmission signature and tracing it back to your current location. And I may have accidentally triggered a few automated distress signals. What? Distress signals? Oh, just standard EDC emergency protocols. You know, the ones that get activated when Earth Defense Coalition citizens are threatened by hostile alien forces. Luna checked an imaginary watch on her wrist. I'd say you've got about 20 minutes before a full battle fleet arrives to investigate. The blood drained from Vash'ti's scaled face. That's impossible. You don't have access to EDC emergency systems. Don't I? Luna tilted her head innocently. Dad did say I wasn't supposed to use his access codes for personal emergencies, but I think getting kidnapped by space pirates probably counts as a legitimate exception. Xar'thok felt the universe shift around him. His simple kidnapping job had just turned into a potential galactic incident. Captain, Navigator Krex called out urgently. I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching our position. Big ones. How big? Xar'thok asked, though he already knew he wasn't going to like the answer. Dreadnought class. At least 6 of them. On the main screen, Overlord Vash'ti was frantically gesturing to someone off camera. Retreat to the rendezvous point immediately. Abort the mission. But Overlord, Xar'thok protested. What about our payment? Your payment is not dying when the Earth Defense Coalition turns you into cosmic dust, Vash'ti snarled, before cutting the transmission. Luna looked around, at the suddenly panicked bridge crew with a satisfied expression. So, I'm guessing the rescue fleet's arrival is going to complicate your evil plans? Evil plans? Xar'thok laughed bitterly. At this point, my only plan is trying to survive the next hour. Oh, that's easy, Luna said brightly. Just surrender peacefully and cooperate with the EDC investigation. I'll put in a good word for you. You'll… What? Well, you didn't actually hurt me, and you let me fix some of your ship's problems. And honestly, this has been way more interesting than spending another week in summer school. Plus, I think you guys might be more confused than evil. Weapons Officer Grix looked up from his console with desperation in his eyes. Captain, the EDC fleet will be in firing range in 15 minutes. Orders? Xar'thok looked at Luna, who was calmly finishing her grilled cheese sandwich while his entire world fell apart around him. the most feared pirate in the galaxy, brought low by a 12-year-old girl with a talent for technology and absolutely no sense of appropriate fear. "You know what?" he said finally. "Signal the EDC fleet. Tell them we surrender and request permission to transfer the prisoner safely." "Really?" Luna asked, sounding genuinely pleased. "That's probably the smartest thing anyone's said all day. Don't push it, kid." 20 minutes later, as EDC Marines swarmed through his ship and placed him in restraints, Xar'thok found himself oddly at peace with the situation. His reputation was destroyed, his crew was in custody, and his ship was being impounded as evidence. But Luna Martinez, the honey badger in human form who had single-handedly dismantled everything he thought he knew about fear and intimidation, gave him a cheerful wave as she was reunited with her parents. "Thanks for not torturing me," she called out. "And good luck with the legal proceedings. I hear EDC prisons have really good educational programs." As the transport ship carried him away toward what would undoubtedly be a very long prison sentence, Xar'thok couldn't help but smile. He'd been defeated by a child who treated his death threats like learning opportunities and his torture devices like interesting science projects. A human who had looked at the most dangerous pirate in the galaxy and seen someone who just needed better mental health resources. It was humiliating. It was devastating to his reputation. It was absolutely, completely, utterly human. And somehow, that made it almost worthwhile. Almost.